Hi everybody, it's me, Beth Maitland at Drama Queen Bee Quilt Studio in my little sewing nook, my little creative nook. I've got my rooibos tea, red bush tea, and I've got my project making kits for my class coming up in a couple of weeks. And what we talked about last time was this threefold pouch, and we did a little bit of construction. I'm gonna go backwards now in time and just do some Kantha stitching and maybe make some Suffolk puffs this afternoon and talk for a little while as I sew. Let's see. I guess we'll use this. I found at an antique fair mall a whole big bucket of these for $1 each. So my friend Myra, who's one of my students, and I, she's also lives close by, and we sometimes meet for lunch halfway. And there's an antique, one of those shops that are different booths in a large metal building, like a kind of a barn building. And there's a few ladies that have sewing things. Myra also gave me this lovely little egg cup from there, which I was going to make into a pincushion, but then I got obsessed with the antique buttons being in it. So, so I haven't made it yet because I just love it. I just love looking at it. Anyway, let's thread up. So we're trying another one of these chatty videos. And so I wanted to ask right off the bat, how's everybody doing? That's another interesting thing that happens nowadays in these long videos about just the process, is that we talk about things that we like, and I like you guys. And so how's everybody doing? Another thing that a few people talk about are things like, what are you reading? What are you binging? What are you watching? And I have two off the charts amazing, a book that I'm listening to while I slow stitch, and in my car while I drive back and forth to Los Angeles. You know what? I think this thread is a little bit stiff for my needs. I'm gonna, wait 1 second. I'm gonna go get my pearl cotton because I think I'm gonna like my perle better. This is crochet cotton from it's feeling stiff. This is the stuff I got from the antique store, and it's feeling a little stiff. So I'm gonna go switch to pearl cotton. One moment, please. Which I also got, same story, at the antique mall. It had this really cute, oh, nope, I guess I lost the label. I was gonna show you the cute vintage label that was on it. But anyway, so we're gonna go back to perle. Anyway, I am a huge Louise Penny fan. And I have a friend named Will Schwalbe, who is also a just amazing writer, but who I've known since he was in his late teens when he came out and spent some time in Los Angeles. He was in school and he wanted to be a screenwriter at the time. And hilariously, he turned into, writing definitely was his forte. He is a publisher and an editor and a best-selling author himself. Most prominently, End of Your Life book club, he wrote about the time during his mom's struggle with pancreatic cancer, and during her treatment, he would take her and they would spend all this time talking about books they were reading or that were influencing their lives. And the whole thing, it's more like a memoir. It's not really, it's not fiction. It's kind of following that journey for Will and his mom and his family, and how books made all the difference. So back to stitching for just a second. In our project, this is going to be another threefold pouch. And so what I've done a little Kantha here to start. And what we're going to do today is just Kantha stitching. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's international and called different things in different countries, but sort of the African version is Kantha. There's a Japanese version called Boro. It's also a relative of sashiko. It is in and out stitching that holds down multi-layers of cloth. And right now we're still at the early phases of the project. So what we have is a layer, you can see the fringing of even weave, which is called Osnaburg cloth, one of my favorites to work with because you can get the needle through it easily, and a layer of just 100% cotton batting, leftover scraps from my long arm quilting studio downstairs. And I have now gathered an assortment of lovely colors with the thought this might be a Hanukkah gift. It's going to be a scissor case or a 3-fold pouch like the one right here in Christmas colors. So we're gonna just do the Kantha stitching now. And then, like I said, after we do a little bit of that, I'm gonna stop and make a Suffolk puff on camera. On my YouTube channel, there's a video on exactly how to do that. I'm just gonna grab a scrap and just do it on the fly because honestly, the whole process should be relaxing and no stress. And our class is about learning about collaging, just tearing bits of fabric and making it all fit in a pleasing assortment, and then stitching it all down and embellishing with a layer or 2 or 3 on top. Now, I don't have much. This was already preloaded, so I don't have, it's a offcut from stacking this down, so I don't think I'm going to get very far. So we'll be probably making yo-yos before you know it. At any rate, my friend Will is great friends with Louise Penny, who is Canadian. She lives in a little village in Quebec. And I don't know if any of you read her. She writes the Three Pines mysteries. It's a series with an amazing, based on her husband, detective. He's actually it takes place in Quebec in a little village called Three Pines, as we said, but he works out of Montreal. And he's the head of homicide for the Sûreté de Quebec. And this is her 20th book, and it came out last week. And it's called The Black Wolf, and it is fantastic. In fact, although not really, it's a certainly standalone book, but the book prior to it that came out last year at this time is called The Gray Wolf. And I reread that in preparation for the release of The Black Wolf, which is the shocking conclusion. And it's not, they both books stand alone. And all of them are the latest 2 in her series of Gamache novels. And frankly, I would start at the beginning if this sounds at all interesting to you. What I love about Louise Penny's writing is her philosophy. She is very, she's similar to my age, and she is a former journalist. She was a radio interviewer and journalist in Canada, and has done a whole bunch of really interesting things. But interestingly, that she has seen so much of the latest news and modern life and the pains and trials of the world that we live in now. And by our age, we've seen a few things. She's lost her husband. I've lost my husband. Hers was a very different story than mine. But it has really informed her, and she has not lost any of her hope. She may have wavered during her dark moments, as did I, but she, you can tell, even in the dark times in her plots of her stories, that there's hope at the end of it, that there is the whole point is rather, like I said, philosophical, that we all get to make the choice every day about how we live our lives. It's not what life does to us, what happens to us, the circumstances, the crises, the drama, the triumph, the happiness. It's what we do with what we're given and how we continue on that kind of matters. That's a reflection of our character. And Gamache is based loosely on her husband, but honestly is such a dream character that that there really is someone that sees the horrors of life every day and yet can retain his goodness. And I just love the hope in that. Also, really interesting plots, really fun crimes, always murders involved because he's head of homicide. So there's always a murder, but in the same way that I enjoy Agatha Christie. Super fun to see how this good man deals with evil, darkness, blackness, the black wolf. So I race out to grab it, and it like I said, it does stand alone. But you will maybe you'll just start on this journey and start at book 1. This is book 20. I don't mean to overwhelm you, but they're fabulous books and super fun. And like I said, very inspiring, very hopeful. And I love that. So maybe you'll grab a Louise Penny book. And back to my friend Will. He just interviewed her last week, and I bought a ticket online for the Zoom meeting from Barnes & Noble. And they were so charming together and so much fun together. And I was so excited because part of buying a ticket for their Zoom interview was also getting a book in the mail. So I got my hardbound copy this last couple of days. So that was also fun. So that's what I'm reading. What are you reading? Do you listen to books on tape while you stitch? Do you listen in the car? Would you rather hold a real book in your hands? Sometimes I'm just in the mood for that, aren't you? I just like to hold a leather-bound copy of a book. I have a bunch of classics that I occasionally revisit, and what I really like about them is that they're substantial hardbound copies of books that have been around for hundreds of years, and I just love the power of words. So, speaking of the power of words, I have totally rattled on and on. So we're out of thread. So we're gonna, I'm gonna tie off, and we're gonna make a yo-yo and find a spot for it. What I like to do at this stage of my construction is I like to kind of audition several different elements: pieces of lace, pieces of trim, pieces of yo-yos and buttons, and any embellishments that I come up with that I might sort of want to attach. And then sometimes I tack them down in advance of doing the Kantha stitching because, for example, if I'm going to use this beige thread on a darker blue square and I have a circular, pretend this is my yo-yo, attached to this part of the design, I can Kantha around that circular shape and keep going around that circular shape and make kind of an interesting flow in the texture and the stitching. And sometimes I really like to do that. So I do kind of a little bit of a layout first. And you can see some of that here. I hope that you can see that in this light, that here's an example of a yo-yo where I followed it with the Kantha stitching because I sewed that down in advance. Now, if you wait until after all the Kantha is done, like on this piece, if I added it there, you don't always get that design element. So it's just another fun little option, an opportunity to build in some texture and design using the embellishments you're gonna sew on. So hold on, and I'm gonna get us ready for a yo-yo or two. Okay, we're back. I've threaded some needles, and I've got a couple of little scraps, offcuts of preparing the kits for these downstairs in the studio. So we're going to try a couple of Suffolk buffs. And while we do, I wanted to tell you another way that reading influences my life. This is my favorite tea in my favorite mug, which is made by Juliska. And if I show you it, it'll tip over. But my favorite tea at the moment is by the Yogi Company. It's chai rooibos, warming and spicy sweet, caffeine-free herbal supplement, organic. So I love red bush tea. And the way I discovered rooibos, red bush tea, it's an African product, was by reading Alexander McCall Smith's Ma Ramotswe series, the #1 ladies detective agency. So she drinks it all day long at her detective agency office. And Ma Ramotswe loves her red bush tea. So I did some research and found several different flavors that I like and have been drinking it now for years and years, at least 10 years. Thank you, Alexander McCall Smith and Ma Ramotswe. So I took the scrap and I just took a snip and tore off a little bit of it to make it roughly square. And I am not fussy about this. For a different project, perhaps I would be. But for frayed edges and just throwing it down, as the Roxy girls say, throw it down, just throw it down. I'm a little more fussy than that, but still a little bit wild. I just round off the corners of a square scrap of something. I just literally, it's no big deal. It is, I don't have a template. I don't know if that was even on camera, so I'll show you one that I think is. I don't even use a template. I just square the corners and take all those little nips off, and we'll do it again with the darker fabric. And again, this is a rectangle, so I'll do square-ish, make a little snip, tear off my little rectangle, and I'll save that for another place. It will go somewhere on something, I'm sure. Getting harder and harder to manage what to do with all the scraps. And it's not a perfect square, but we're just gonna chop off the corners, round them just slightly. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and it's very casual approach. Now, see, that looks a little bit like a sort of an oval instead of a circle. You can, if you want, you can go ahead and try to circle that up a little bit. We'll do that, I guess. But if you and I weren't meeting on camera, I would have just made it the way it was. I would have done the oval, and it would have changed the shape of my yo-yo just slightly, but not by much. And that's good enough for me. So we'll get rid of those little bits. And I have some construction thread. Now, when I say that, what I mean is cotton quilting thread that you can buy. This is by Coats and Clark. It's just some leftover thread that I had laying around. And I have it in several colors, and it's just cotton for machine quilting. I call it construction thread. So when I say that, I'm just mean something that's not a decorative thread like perle or stranded cotton, DMC for embroidery, or wool, like sock weight wool that you might use for thread painting. It's just plain old sewing machine thread that you would use to make seams. So that's what I use for my yo-yos. And because I use a smaller needle and I go right through my my finger, because it's a running stitch and I tend to get very sashiko and go crazy and just use my finger, I'm trying really hard to remember to load on my thimble. This is, I think it was by a Clover. It's a size medium, and it has a metal top, which I love, and a silicone body so that it fits snugly. I used to swear by leather thimbles, but the problem became the leather would stretch over time, and pretty soon my thimble would just fly off. If I was reaching for something or flicking my hand, the thimble would fly off. And so the leather ones don't last as long because the leather adjust to your body oil and your finger size, and after a time, and not too long a time, like less than 6 months, it no longer fits. So I switched to the silicone, and I really am liking that very well. So now we've made our circle-ish. On the wrong side of the fabric, we start there. I've knotted my thread, and it is single strand. I know that Jennifer Clouston down in South Africa and sometimes Australia swears by doubling it. She does that with her English paper piecing also. She uses double thread and the knot ties off 2 strands. I just don't think that this is going to get worn out, and it's not going to be challenging to the actual strength of the thread and the construction of the yo-yo. So I'm just going to do a single one. It's never given me trouble. I've never had someone tell me later after I gave them a gift with a yo-yo on it that the yo-yo fell apart. I take a few precautions at the end, but basically you can see what I'm doing. I'm just doing a running stitch all the way around the outside of the circle. I do approximately, especially because I tore this, I do approximately 1/4 inch from the edge. You can take your chances and do it closer to the edge if you wish. If you cut it, you'll tend to have a little bit more integrity of the weave of the thread. The other thing that you can do is, if you are a little bit more formal sewer, or you have a project that you want it to be a little bit more official and sort of professionally finished, you can needle turn it. You can turn the outer edge under. So you would bring this towards you, and you would actually make a hem, and you would do your needle running stitch in and out, and then as you work your way around it, very much like needle turn applique, you turn this as you go and take another few inches and do in and out with your running stitch turning over that hem. I actually like it with the frayed edges, because when we draw our drawstring closed, I like the frayed edges sticking out of the center, almost like pistil and stamen situation with a real flower. I love the little, when we draw it all to the center, I love the little frayed edges, tattered, crazy, shabby chic look. So that's why I don't turn mine under. Now, again, on another project that was a little more formal, if I was making some kind of a baby gift or something where it needed to be laundered or whatever, I would probably turn the edge under. But this is how we go for now, because we're slow stitching and it's my project and I make the rules, and there's no wrong answer and there's no mistakes. There's only learning and growing and stitching and sewing. Hey, I'm going to have to needlepoint that. I'll rewind the tape and remember what I said. We're almost there. So as we, again, a running stitch that's going to be a gathering stitch all the way around the outer edge of the circle-ish. And as we get to the end, I take my final little tuck. You can see the knot there. That's where we began. And up it comes. And a lot of people do these different ways. Again, this is a really down and dirty, get it on, slap it down, as Sarah and Rachel say, slap it down. So we've pulled the drawstring and drawn it to the middle. And do you see all my little fun frayed little edges and fringy things that come out as though it's the center of a flower? I just love that. So now we have our self-help puff. And I do an odd extra step that most people don't do, but here's where I do get a little worried that it's gonna come apart at some time in the future. A lot of people just go down into the back of it at this point and tack it down, or they go through the edge and tack it down and knot off. I actually I take my needle through a bunch of the gathers, maybe a ½ inch of them, and I catch them all in my needle, and I'm going around a second time. Now I back step just a little bit, a couple of little ruffles, and then I go forward another, say, ½ inch through a bunch more of those little gathers and pull it through. And the purpose of this in my little frail mind is that this is securing those gathers, that if for some reason while I'm sewing this down and tacking the edges down, if the knot comes apart, this keeps it from unraveling all my work and me having to take out the entire yo-yo and sew it all over again. And ask me why I do this, because that has actually happened to me on more than one occasion, where my knot on my thread was just a little bit too small, and all the tugging and manipulation of sewing it down caused it to come apart. And I had already sewn down onto the project several, like half the yo-yo, and I had to start all over again. Oopsie. So I do this little extra step. It's not necessary, but it's just how I do. And then I tie off. And if I'm making this for a specific place on my project, let's say right there, I may just not tie off. Actually, I still do. I make one little knot, but I don't cut threads. I just sew it on right now. I'm not going to. We're going to go on and make another one, but just an option for you. If you're making if you don't have a Ziploc bag or a bowl full of yo-yos that you already have, that you've collected from a quilt you took apart, or that are vintage, or you've made a whole bunch in different colorways. If you're making it just for this, now you can still go ahead and just sew it on down if you know where you want to place it on your work. So we've talked about our favorite tea. And I change up. I really like the chai rooibos for fall because it has like almost it's almost pumpkin pie spicy, kind of cinnamon and clove and stuff in it. But I also really they have a lavender chamomile one that's a sleepy time tea. And lavender honey it's called. And if you were to buy a kit or something like that from my Etsy shop, I send you a couple of bags of my favorite tea and some other little treat as a little thank you gift for shopping with me and supporting my creative journey. So the chai is what's in the shop at the moment as a little treat in your Etsy package. So now we're going to do a light colored one. And again, we turn it over to the wrong side, and in we go. And start around, again, about 1/4 inch, just running stitch all the way around the outside. So books have been a really meaningful part of my life and shaped some choices I've made and made me think in other ways about lives that, the one I'm reading now, the Louise Penny 3 Pines books, it made me long to live in a village. It made me look for a place for me as a place of sanctuary. And I have certainly found a little property that's a sanctuary after a big trauma in my life where I had to get kind of out of Los Angeles and get my wits back about me and heal a little bit and get through some things. Moving up to my little Central Coast village, I don't have all of the characters across the street and across the square, and I don't have a local bookstore or a coffee shop or a bistro where I can go with all of my neighbors and have drinks or coffee or breakfast in the morning. But I definitely have that flavor to the place that I live, and so I'm never far from another book, because really it has shaped and formed almost every aspect of my life since I can remember. Books, what are you reading? Shows, I don't know how I even found it. I am binging the most bizarre, fabulous series called Blind Spot. I don't even know who the actors are. And I'm already on season 2. I just can't stop watching it. And I go to bed too late because it's so exciting. It's the strangest. I'm a big crime fan, as you can probably tell from my book reading choices. Blind Spot. It's so interesting. It's about an asset of the FBI who is delivered to Times Square in a bag, and everything on her body is a clue to a mystery, and they have to figure out who she is, and they have to figure out, and she's had her whole memory has been erased. So in the first episode, we find this woman in a bag covered in tattoos, and all of the rest of the series is unraveling all of that. It's just amazing, and it's so entertaining. And I just love that I don't have to, there's a lot of fighting, so I can look down and stitch during the fights. And what I'm doing right now, there's a little spot that is caught on the edge of the fabric, and it's in some of the little frayed pieces, and it's kind of made a knot. So it's getting in the way of my drawstring. So I'm fiddling with that while I'm talking to you. Let's hope this isn't a video fail where I'm going to have to turn this off, sort it out, and talk to you about it later. Wait, well, it's doing okay for there. Let me solve this problem, and I'll be right back with you. So here's what happened. My stitching got really close to the edge, and it got tangled up in all of the little frayed bits, and it sort of made a knot, so I couldn't do the drawstring thing, which is required for a Suffolk puff. So I just had to fiddle around with my needle and untie the little fringes, and now we're back in business. And so this is going to go very much the same way as the last one. I'm going to catch those little bits of clusters of gathering, and I just love the little fringes coming out though, so I'm not going to change my policy about, look how cute that is. Look how cute. So that's going to go somewhere, probably on a dark spot. And the one thing else I want to mention before we close is that when we're making a threefold or like a purse that collage they're going to use for like a crossbody bag or something like that, you have to keep in mind the folds. This fabric is not directional, but you do have to kind of keep in mind where you're going to fold your bag. And I don't like it when there's a seam on a fold. I don't like to have all the fringe poking up like that. I sort of worry that it's going to come apart or that these are going to get overused, overworn. So I'll probably put that on the inside a little higher than the seam, and then flap that over. And I think that's going to make me happier, because that little seaming has something underneath it, and it's going to be just over the top. So that's how I think I'm going to construct. So when I'm adding my embellishments, I don't want to put like a yo-yo right there on top of a fold unless that's part of my design. And so the basic idea is bundle them as you wish, decorate with buttons, with broken earrings and jewelry and brooches, ribbons, lace, vintage embroideries. I'm going to start figuring out my embellishment stuff now, which I'm going to do off camera. But I just was wanting to sew for a little while with you guys today, since we've been talking about sewing and chatting. So I hope you got a quick look at a yo-yo construction, our Suffolk puff, and a quick look at collaging, and a quick look at beginning Kantha to get this thing all put together. Again, another class sample for it's going to be a scissor case. So I've even got some little scissor fabric that I've cut out, a little scissor thing to add as an embellishment to applique on. So I'll give you a little progress report at some future time. But in the meantime, thank you for joining me, talking about books, talking about our favorite tea, talking about how books sort of inform my life and my choices. I hope that you have things like that too, that are favorites that inspire you and make you think. And I hope that you're sewing something lovely for the holidays, if not for a gift, maybe for yourself, for a special little sewing accessory, a needle book, a case for your scissors, like these are. And I hope that whatever you're doing, it's creative and fulfilling, and that you're having a great, great time. I'll talk to you again really soon. Thank you for joining me. And this is Beth Maitland with Drama Queen Bee Quilts.